Hi, everyone. We're going to start in just a few seconds. Thank you so much for joining. I'm super excited to have you here. Yeah, I think we can get started. Hi, Michal. What a lovely background. Okay, so I'm just gonna record the session and then we can start. Okay. So again, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you for being in our Zoom, in our Facebook live session, and we'll also have a recording saved in the Facebook group, so you'll be able to review this conversation afterwards. I want to welcome you to another Startup Designers webinar. If you're wondering why I'm talking in English, it's because our speaker today is from San Francisco, and we're very happy to have him. But before we go ahead and jump to the actual talk, I wanted to tell you more about our community. And as I said, the session is recorded. This is more like something I need to remember. So about our lovely community. Other than myself, we have Ina, Michal, Lishai, Ortal, and Adar. Each one has an amazing role that they are doing as part of the Startup Designers community. For example, Lishai is in charge of our Instagram page. And in the last few months, she's been doing an amazing job with the page. It's really a place for us to share inspiration, to share like small experiences from a designer's life, to share tips and every other cool inspiration we come across. So if you're interested, please follow us. And if you get a really cool snapshot from the talk today, which I'm sure you will, you can tag us at Startup Designers. We would love you to do that. Other than our Instagram page, we also have a newsletter. Our newsletter is managed by Michal, and she's doing an amazing job with articulating the most important data, most important information you need to know. Our newsletter is all about FOMO, fear of missing out. We don't want to give you lots of information. We just want to give you like 3 or 4 main topics that we believe are the most important for this week. So if you want like a narrowed down version of the most interesting news for designers, join the newsletter. I recommend it, but I am biased. If you're looking for a link, we have it weekly on the Facebook group, or you can just check the announcement and see a link there. What else? Well, of course, we have our amazing mentoring program. So if you're not familiar with it, Ina is the manager of the program, and with her amazing work, she's being able to facilitate over 400, if I'm not mistaken, connections between mentors and mentees. And we currently have over 100 mentors. That's amazing. Those are designers that give their own free time just to be able to help the community grow and to help other professionals become better. So we really appreciate your time as mentors. And if you're interested in becoming a mentor, or if you're interested in becoming a mentee, we would love to have you. Again, more details about that can be found in our Facebook group under the announcement. And you can also just go to startupdesigners.co to find more details about the program. So I think that's it. Let me see. Yeah, so that's my really quick introduction. And before I hand off the talking privileges to Greg, I wanted to give him a quick shout out just because I'm a huge fan. Greg is someone that is very vocal in his amazing presence and work in Salesforce. And I think he really deserves a big shout out for us. So to get you excited as I am, I want to tell you more about him. Greg is a conversation designer lead at Salesforce for voice and chat experiences. As a linguistic, Greg focuses his work on empowering businesses to create chatbots that feel natural and helpful, build user trust, and meet customers. Expectations from conversational behavior. Uh, he specializes in tailoring conversation design for cross-cultural differences across channels and user populations, as well as how to effectively express personality or conversational style. His paper, Conversational Style Beyond the Nuts and Bolts of Conversation, was actually published in the Conversational UX volume of the Springer Human-Computer Interaction series. So that's amazing. And with that, Greg, I'm gonna hand it off to you. Yeah, and let's do like a virtual clap, people. I don't know how to do virtual claps. I can do a real one.
Thank you
Okay.
so much, Shia. I appreciate it. That was so kind of you, and I truly appreciate your words. I'm actually kind of a shy person, so I'm not really sure exactly how to react, aside from the fact that I'm just very grateful and very flattered. All right, so from here, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I can actually get this to work. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So thank you for having me. It's just truly a pleasure and an honor to be here. I never thought that I'd be doing something like this. I'm very much just sort of a nerd about language. Like Shia mentioned, I am a linguist by training, and what that really means is that I essentially look at language like it's a system, and truly explore and understand the processes of language as a system and how it gets used in everyday life. And my undergraduate and graduate work was really focused on understanding how language gets used in conversation in online spaces, particularly in chat. And the reason that was is because when I was a sophomore in college, I got dumped over online chat and I could feel it coming. And as a 19-year-old, your first major heartbreak, it's like, okay, I need to figure out what happened here. I really need to know. And so I sort of threw myself into linguistics to try and truly understand, okay, how is it that when I couldn't see his face or hear his voice or see, any kind of hand gestures or hear any kind of pitch or intonation or anything like that, I could still feel distance over chat. And that was sort of the beginning of my understanding of how users can leverage things like textuality, whether that's putting a period at the end of their message in a chat transmission, or not, or using emojis, or using all caps, all of these different stylistic aspects of the text that allow users to communicate extra meaning on top of the semantic layer of language. And that was essentially like my foray, I think, eventually into UX, where at Salesforce, I now explore how to essentially take what we know in linguistics as far as observing patterns of language and then convert those into design tools so that way we can actively create the experience we seek to evoke in our users. And so today that's what I'll be covering is how to, again, leverage linguistics for best practices in conversation design, specifically for enterprise customer support. And before we begin, I just wanted to, everyone who's ever seen a presentation at Salesforce is familiar with this. We have our forward-looking statement. All of this text basically says that Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and anything that I show in this presentation or discuss today may never actually see release. So please make all your purchasing decisions based on the product as it exists on the market today. So like I said, I'm a total nerd, and like any good nerd, I have a favorite cartoon, and that's Dragon Ball Z. If any of you are familiar with this, you'll know that it's a very popular fighting cartoon, and it comes from Japan. Maybe some of you have heard of it. I grew up watching it. I grew up watching the show religiously. Every afternoon, my grandmother's living room. It was a huge part of my childhood. And as an adult nerd, I've taken to collecting items and tokens that celebrate and show off my fanhood. Like, if you will actually believe it, I have little figurines on my desk, just like this. And that includes in digital spaces. Even in chat, I started using a messaging app where you can send these fantastically ornate stickers in chat, and it takes over a whole chunk of the screen. It's really obnoxious from a graphical UI perspective, but I also find it to be very fun. And when I found out that this app that I was using had Dragon Ball Z sticker packs, well, naturally, I lost it. I was like, I need these stickers. How do I get them? And as a true fan, I had to essentially go through the app and figure it out. But I was new to the chat app, and so I didn't know where the stickers lived or how I could obtain them. But I did know where to find the app's chatbot, and I figured, okay, this has to have the answer. So I fire up a chat with the app's bot, and that way I can avoid sort of tumbling my way through their information architecture or hopping down a search. And I ask, where are the Dragon Ball sticker packs? And it responds with, hey friend, have you checked out this week's new sticker packs? We're super excited to share them with you. Check out the free stickers. Not exactly what I was looking for. So I repeat myself. Maybe I wasn't clear enough the first time. I want the Dragon Ball sticker packs. And maybe I got it. Maybe I got it this time. And the bot, will serve me up those stickers. Not quite. Hey friend, have you checked out this week's new sticker packs? Well, at this point, I wanted to throw my phone out the window. And I expressed my frustration with ugh, and the bot responds again, hey friend, have you checked out this week's new sticker packs? Again, not what I was going for. I wasn't even asking for anything here. I'm just expressing frustration, and it responds with the same message. So eventually, I gave up and I asked a friend where I can find the stickers in the App Store, and then I accomplished my task. But as a conversation designer, this really set my mind on fire because the bot's artificial and robotic nature killed my trust in the system, and it hindered my trust in the brand of the company who provided the Dragon Ball stickers. And at Salesforce, trust is our number one value, and for good reason. Ultimately, trust boils down to motivation and engagement with the system. If you don't trust it, you're not going to use it. And because of the usability issues in the conversation itself, I'm overall less motivated to use the company's bot, and I'm concerned that the company itself isn't giving me, the customer, the attention that I need, nor is able to deliver on what it is that I'm asking them for. And it turns out that the artificial and robotic nature of bot chat these days is actually a problem. It's one of the leading factors that's impacting the extent to which customers trust a company's bot. We know that bots are not going away. In fact, the bots market is growing year over year. And in the current climate of things in the world, in the post-COVID-19 world, touchless conversational experiences are much more prolific. And when it comes to text-based chatbots, yes, you're touching something, but you're touching your own phone. You don't have to touch something else in order to accomplish it. And we see this even in data. A US-based survey surveyed 4,089 participants in the United States, and 70% of those participants argued that they would not use a company's bot again after a bad experience. And of that 70%, only 60% of the same 60% of the same participants found the bots to be robotic and artificial in their responses. So all of this is to say that users' tolerance threshold for conversational competence with a chatbot is pretty low. If 70% would not use a bot again after a bad experience, that shows us that most people don't have the patience for a poor conversation. So that really means that we have about 1 or 2 shots to really get it right. And the fact that, again, as a former researcher, I have to concede that correlation and causation are not the same thing. However, I don't think it's a coincidence that in these data, we see that 60% are essentially calling out the robotic and artificial nature of the discourse itself. And it's that part of the experience that truly impedes the customer's ability, in my mind, to trust the bot to be effective. And therein lies our new UX challenge, conversation. And I truly mean conversation, not conversational, in that the UI has to aspire to be like or reminiscent of conversation, but the actual conversation itself. What does the machine say, and how does the machine say it? And no longer is our focus on the interactional style of graphical UI, but the discourse itself, the systematic use of language to communicate meaning, to design relationships in synchronous interaction with users. And some might say that conversation design is simply writing dialogues. It's this tactical thing that you just do. And in the words of Madonna herself, I feel that that's a little reductive. It's so much more than that, because it's really about being strategic and systematic with what you say and how you say it. Luckily, there's decades of research in linguistics that have shown that conversation exhibits clear patterns. And if there's anything that I've learned about design, it's that patterns are what we leverage to create consistent and personalized experiences for users. And so we can leverage those patterns that we know from linguistic research to actively design the discourse so that the experience doesn't frustrate, alienate, mislead, or overwhelm the user. All of these are examples of conversational experiences on the market today. And everyone who wrote these dialogues was working on conversation design, whether they realized it or not. Yet, despite the fact that they went in with the best intentions, we still end up with these experiences where there's frustration, there's alienation, it can't understand my accent if we're talking about voice, or it's misleading, it's telling the user that it's human when it's not, or it's overwhelming because the chatbot is piping in all of this information at once and there's no pause. Truly, this shows that, despite your best intentions, whatever kind of assumptions you go in about how language works, that's going to get baked into the product and ultimately yield a challenging experience for the user. So truly, conversation is, in my mind, the next wave of UX. Conversation design is the tool, and it's all powered by linguistics. And we see this across many interactional contexts. First, with text-forward conversation with chatbots, then voice-forward conversation with voice assistants that live on tablets or phones or computers, such as Google Home and Einstein Voice. And then we have voice-centric conversation with home assistant devices like Alexa. Now, with text-forward conversation, it's fortunate in that it's sort of this hybrid new environment of conversation, in that you have some graphical UI elements. You can use menus and embedded buttons to be able to sort of control and provide guide rails for the conversation itself. That's not something that you're going to have in other voice interactions. And the personality, the conversational style of the bot comes through textuality, like I mentioned, playing with the way that the text looks, using emojis. But with voice forward conversation, you have less, the text doesn't take the center of the stage. Essentially, the text is only there to support the voice interaction. So the personality and the conversational style of the bot comes through pitch, through intonation, through the actual acoustics of the voice. And there's some graphical UI elements to support that, in that you might have buttons in there or a transcription of whatever is said. But with voice-centric conversation, all of those graphical UI elements are gone. You end up essentially with the core of the experience focusing solely on the acoustics of the voice itself, and then maybe you have a little ring light or some dots or lights of some kind on the physical device itself to indicate some extra meaning. But in this case, for voice-centric, the pitch and the acoustics become far more important. Now, today, what I'm focusing on is text-forward conversation design, leveraging linguistics to create a natural, helpful chatbot conversation for enterprise customer support. And the reason why I say this is because it's important, I think, as a conversation designer to truly narrow your scope, Because if you're trying to design conversation for anything in the world, you're never really going to actually be able to cover everything. It's too broad. And so narrowing your scope to exactly what it is you're trying to solve is going to help you in your design efforts. And particularly at Salesforce, what we're interested in on Service Cloud is the scaling of customer support at the enterprise level. So I will show you how I leverage linguistics to essentially provide some tips and tricks to create a natural and helpful chatbot conversation for enterprise support, and then show you how to do it using our Einstein Bot Builder product. And I'm going to do it in 10 steps because while it's important, I think, that you do get the theory around it from linguistics, I don't want it to feel heavy. It's really important to me as a designer to make sure that folks can walk away with tangible items to use and apply, and it doesn't feel quite so cumbersome. So 10 steps gets you the basics in terms of what I think is the usability of conversation based on linguistic research. Step 1, the bot introduces itself as a bot. So I get a lot of questions around, how can we make the bot more human, or, I want it to come across as very, human-like. And I think the goal there is not for the bot to pose as a human, but truly to satisfy what humans believe are the core tenets and patterns of conversational behavior. You don't have to necessarily, conversation is fundamentally a human behavior, yes. But if there's patterns to conversation, then we can teach a machine how to follow those patterns. But we don't want it to come across, we don't want to position it as a human, because that's a lie. It's not. And transparency builds trust. Customers will feel duped if you don't tell them up front, hey, I'm not human, I'm a machine. And so in this case, for our example here, we've built a pizza bot using the Einstein Bot Builder called Astro's Pizza Bot. And we tell the customer up front, hey, I'm Astro, I'm your pizza ordering bot. We use a little bot emoji. We use a bot as the avatar. Again, these are leveraging some of the graphical UI elements to support what's actually in the conversation design where it says bot. And as a former user researcher, I also have to concede there might be folks out there who say, well, hey, you used to be a researcher. Don't you know that users don't read? And yes, I am aware of that. However, I argue that even if the customer misses it, if they scroll back in the conversation because the transcript persists, it's sticky, they can still find out that they weren't misled by the product. They might have just missed it themselves. Step 2, the bot states what it can do. So research has shown that users feel conflicted when they're trying to find the words to trigger the bot to act the way they want it to. And so a really great way of leveraging this particular unique conversational context where you do have graphical UI elements that can help support the conversation, you can actually guide users and help mitigate some of that anxiety by providing guardrails with, say, a menu. So in this case, I would pick maybe the top 3 use cases that you're trying to address, and then always include an option to escalate, because it's important to give the user an escape hatch in case they want to get to a human so they don't feel trapped in the interaction with a machine. And then put those in a menu. Give them something to pick from. Menus are great for setting up users in a chat UI, particularly with a chatbot, to begin a path. Step number 3, the bot understands various ways of phrasing things. Variation is extremely important. We don't always use the exact same words in conversation to express the same idea. And so what I have here as examples are various ways to greet someone in English. But you wouldn't want to say hello to a bot once and have it respond, and then say hey to a bot another time, and then have the bot say, I'm sorry, I don't understand that, when essentially they mean a very similar thing. They have a similar function. If you think about maybe the last time you went to order a coffee, granted, this is for Hebrew probably. So if you're ordering coffee in Tel Aviv and you do it in Hebrew, I concede that I'm not in any way trained to understand Hebrew. But I would hazard a guess that the way that you greet someone, this morning versus greeted someone 2 weeks ago might be a little different. Variation is a natural, healthy, common practice in conversation. And so to a bot, it needs to be able to understand that all of this should be treated in a very similar way. They should interpret this in a similar way. And if there's anything you take away from me today, please let it be that there is no such thing as a misspelling. I'll say that again. There's no such thing as a misspelling. I think oftentimes, sort of growing up in and being educated in school, we've been taught by people who are very by the book about grammar that there's a right and a wrong way to say things. There's a right and a wrong way to spell things. And the problem with that is that, first of all, spelling is completely arbitrary. I mean, if you think about how you spell things in English, a lot of things make no sense. So if you have trouble spelling things in English, it's not you, it's English. And spelling from a linguistics perspective it's a farce. It's just something that we've made up to represent language. And the way that users communicate their identity in language is by essentially playing with sort of additional linguistic features on top of whatever the word is. So in voice, that might be my accent, that might be my intonation. But in text, it's going to be spelling because that's the only resource we have. We don't have our voice. So if I type yas, YASSSS, into chat, that's not wrong. It's just a different way of saying yes. But if I'm trying to sort of encode or evoke or express the intersection of my POC and LGBT identity in chat through yas, and it doesn't understand, then it's effectively saying that, okay, the way that I say yas to express that is wrong. And so it's really important then to train your bot to understand, again, all different ways of phrasing things, including maybe some non-standard spellings. So no, no more misspellings. All right, so this is the Einstein Bot Builder, and it's a declarative tool that allows you to teach your bot to have a conversation with your customers. What we see on the left panel here is a list of your bot's abilities. It's a list of all the dialogues that the bot essentially handles. In the center, we have the canvas where you can actually do the conversation design, produce what the bot is going to say to the user, have the bot ask a question, etc. And then on the right panel, we have the preview of the bot. So you can actually see what your conversation design looks like in practice. Now, when it comes to having the bot be able to understand different ways of saying things, you go to this intent tab whereby you can give all the different possible customer inputs. Here's all the different ways you can say hello. And then when it comes to guiding users through the experience, you have the main menu whereby you can include menu items, like I said, maybe the top 3 use cases that you're trying to address, and that gets you that guidance in the conversation. Pretty simple. Step number 4, the bot takes turns with the user. Turn taking is the quintessential aspect and feature of conversation. If only one person is talking, like right now, it's not really a conversation. That's more of a monologue or a speech or a talk. Conversation is about give and take. It's about exchange. It's about leaving a pause and letting the other person speak. But it's also about giving that pacing so that where the other person can actively process what you're saying. So in order to be natural, your bot has to take turns with the user. The bot should also leave time for the user to read what it says. It should take a long enough pause to leave the user enough time to process whatever has come across in the chat. It takes time to read things, and nothing seems or sounds more artificial than sending 5 messages all at once in the chat UI, because then the user has to scroll up and read and catch up. And so we see an example of this on the top. You see all the messages coming at once. There's no pause. And then I have to scroll up in order to see what's up there. Whereas what's on the bottom, you see that little ellipsis, the 3 dots. And that's giving a little bit more time for the user to kind of piece it out, message by message or payload by payload. And so the suggestion here really is to leave about a 1-second delay between the bot's messages so that way the user can read. And the Einstein Bot Builder makes it super easy to create this cadence. All right. So let's say we want to create that kind of turn-taking structure. Pretty easy. Let's ask a question. In this case, the user is trying to place a recurring order. We want to ask them how many pizzas they would like in their, again, this is the pizza bot. How many pizzas would you like in your recurring order? We're going to save it to an entity, which essentially is going to be the category of the information, and then save the answer to a variable, which is a placeholder for the information that gets put in. And then we're going to give them some choices for how many pizzas they want to order. And in this case, we're looking at 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then once we have an idea of how many pizzas they want, we want to know how often you want to have pizzas reordered. And so in this case, we're going to select an entity again. In this case, it's going to be a text entity. And we're going to save it again to that variable, that thing that holds the information. And that will be the reorder cadence variable. And we'll add some more static choices again. I want to order pizzas once a week, twice a week. We'll keep it pretty simple. Then we're going to send a message rather than a question to confirm what the order was. And we're going to use merge syntax in order to do it. So we're going to pull from the previous variables that are holding both the number of pizzas and the text of how often they want to order it. And we're going to use that to essentially create a sentence that confirms with the user what their order is. All right, so we're going to save it and then activate. And once the bot's active, we're going to be able to preview it because we've already set up our embedded chat channels. Hi, I'm Astro, your pizza ordering bot. Okay, I introduced. We have guided the user down a flow, recurring order. We see that turn-taking cadence here, 4 pizzas. How often? Twice a week. I really like pizza. Great. I will reorder 4 pizzas twice a week. Enjoy. And there you have it. Now for creating that pause or the turn-taking cadence. One of my favorite features in the bot builder is the bot response delay. And you can customize the response delay to go up to 3 seconds, or you can set it at the best delay time, which we have determined is 1.2 seconds based on field research with chat agents in Manila. Step number 6, the bot interprets multiple pieces of information at once. Humans use complex sentences in conversation. People don't usually separate individual ideas into separate sentences when they're talking or when they're chatting. So for example, we have Astro here, which is one of our Salesforce Trailhead characters, and they're saying, I'm Astro and I live in San Francisco. It's not, I'm Astro, I live in San Francisco. It's all compiled together in one utterance. And the bot needs to be able to manage that because that's a natural occurring feature of conversation. Bots need to be able to handle complex compound sentences because linguistically, that's just how people communicate. It's how conversation works. Luckily, the way that you do this in the bot builder is pretty easy because thanks to named entity recognition, once we've had all of our entities exposed here once we have all of our entities exposed here, then we're able to then recognize those and then skip a user through the flow if they provide them all at once in a complex sentence, so that way we don't have to ask those questions again. So we're going to type in here, I'd like to order 4 pizzas twice a week in a recurring order, and then it skips all the way to the confirmation step. We didn't have to ask any of those additional questions using menus. We just use the merge syntax and then confirm. And you don't have to do anything extra to do that. It's just something that comes out in the bot builder. Step number 7, the bot apologizes when it can't do something. Apologies are a natural piece and a very important piece of customer service conversation. If the customer asks for something that is outside the scope of what the bot can do, and it's very likely that they will, then the bot needs to be able to apologize. And this happens all the time, even with human agents. I mean, I'm sure you can think of an example when either you or somebody you know has asked to talk to a manager. It's something that happens very naturally in conversation and even with humans. And so it's important that our bots are able to scale to this. So a really good example of this is actually an experience I had last year here in San Francisco. I went to a restaurant with my boyfriend and we ordered breakfast, and I got an omelet, and my omelet was cold and had hair in it. Not so appetizing. So I asked the waiter, I was like, hey, there's something in my food, and then they took it away, and he was visibly frustrated. The owner of the restaurant came over and was like, this is terrible, and he was like slamming the dish around or whatever, and then he just said, okay, I'm gonna refund you your meal. And I was like, okay. But then I walked away feeling like I wanted something more from the interaction, and what I realized was he never said sorry. It's a really important part of conversation for customer service that you can apologize, because it's something that we as customers expect. It's very simple. Just, I'm sorry that that happened, and here you go. Despite the fact that the manager of the store gave me a refund and provided a solution to my problem, I still felt that it was incomplete without an apology. So it's very important that you have that in your bot. Step number 8, the bot shouldn't just stop at sorry, but it should also provide options. So if we think back to the beginning when I had my conversation for the Dragon Ball stickers, that bot kept me trapped in a conversation on infinite loop in total frustration where I couldn't escape or escalate to get any kind of help for my stickers. And that wasn't so great. So even if your bot says sorry, it still needs to provide a way out. It needs to provide a way forward to be truly helpful. And so the bot should be able to provide a path forward for your customer. You can use Flow in Salesforce to create a case, or you can give them the email address so that way they can go off and send an email for a web to case format. You can provide the phone number for them to call or hours of operation when agents are available. Give them a way to move forward. All right, so as part of the bot builder, we have included the confused dialogue, and this is what it defaults to if the bot doesn't understand something, if the user says or does something that the bot cannot compute, and that comes out of the box. You can customize it, you can, make it yours. But we also suggest creating a dialogue called transfer to agent, whereby you can use omnichannel, which is another feature of Service Cloud, to then route the customer to another agent in the queue, a human. And if there's no one available, then you can create a no one available dialogue where you can provide those follow-up pieces of information, like a phone number. Step number 9, thank you. Just like apologies, thank you is a fundamental aspect of support-related conversation. There's so many instances within a conversation for customer support where either the user or the bot will express gratitude of some kind. And so the bot needs to be able to both give and acknowledge and recognize gratitude when it's receiving it. You don't want your bot to respond to a customer who says thank you with, I'm sorry, I didn't understand. Again, consider all variations of gratitude. You can have thanks, I appreciate it, or just appreciate it. All kinds of variations also should be considered when you're trying to express gratitude. So there's your welcome, no problem, my pleasure, all of these different ways of both listening to, understanding, and expressing gratitude to a customer. And then finally, step 10, the bot closes the conversation. Every conversation has to end in some way. And the bot should recognize that when a customer says goodbye, the chat should be over. If Astro says bye, the bot should wind down. And sometimes in service encounters, thank you can mean goodbye. So let's think again about that coffee example. Think about the last time you ordered a coffee, and then you're picking it up from the counter and you walk away. What did you say, if anything? Did you say thank you and walk away? Did you just walk away? In that case, in a service context, thank you can combined with walking away actually indicates goodbye. So if your customer is, essentially saying thanks, and you follow up with the bot saying, is there anything else I can help you with? And the customer says no, then the bot should wind down. All right, so let's figure out how to do this in the builder. We've created a you're welcome dialog, and the bot just says, you're welcome, in response to gratitude, glad I can help. And then the way that the bot is able to trigger this is when you essentially go into the dialog intent, and that's where we put in all these different customer inputs or different variations on how customers would express gratitude to the bot. And whenever someone says this in chat, it will trigger the you're welcome dialog. You're welcome, glad I can help. Now, if we want to end the chat, then this is very specific. We just have the bot say bye, and then we've trained the dialog intent to understand whenever the user is indicating, hey, I'm done. Here's all these different ways of saying goodbye. And to preview this, we're going to fire up the bot. Hi, I'm Astro, your pizza ordering bot. How may I help you? I just say thanks. That triggers the you're welcome dialog. Is there anything else I can help you with? Yes or no. Don't even say yes or no, I just say bye. That triggers the farewell dialog, and there you have it. We can close conversation naturally. And here we are, 10 steps. Just 10. In 10 steps, we have covered the foundational interactional components of service conversation. And we set it up to scale at an enterprise level using the Einstein Bot Builder. And this is all driving usability, delight, and ultimately trust amongst our customers. Feel free to go to this link here, sfdc.co/bot10steps, and there's a one-pager that I've created for folks to go through. And it contains all of the information there if you want to consume it on your own time. And I am open to any questions you may have.
Sorry, I unmuted myself. We do have
good.
questions.
Okay.
But first of all, thank you, Greg. It was really, really interesting.
Awesome.
I have to say, I think it's the second or third time I got to hear this in some variation. And every time I find it really interesting and eye-opening, and I find out that there's something new that I didn't remember from last time. So
awesome.
Thank you so much. So to go over a few questions, I want to start with a question that I had. So you showed us a way, like 10 very constructive tips to build bots using an existing tool, basically.
Yes.
But what if I'm a designer in a startup? I work alone, maybe, and my job is to create a bot, and I have no idea how to start. Could you maybe share some tips on how to? It seems like this huge thing to do. There's so much data to encounter. So how would you start?
I think the first thing I would start with as a designer in a startup would be, well, where is this bot going to live in the ecosystem of channels that we are servicing to our users? Like, what are we really using it for? So for example, are you using a bot for something that's like a business to business, B2B use case where you're trying to service customers who are businesses? Or is the bot meant to essentially act as sort of a conversational front end for a B2C use case, for business to consumer directly? And then from there, is it more like we're trying to capture like lead generation, or are we trying to do something that's more like providing customer support? And then from there, understanding, okay, what are the channels over which we're already sort of taking action on the behalf of and for our users? So to kind of give you an example, if I'm working at a startup and we sell shoes, and We're trying to make sure that our customers have a way at all hours of the day to get some at least immediate quick help regarding any kind of issue they might have with their shoe. Then I at least have some answers. Okay, we are in a B2C use case. It's for customer support, and the objective is essentially to provide some information. Then I would go to my stakeholders and ask, okay, where are we already providing kinds of customer service, and what tools are we using to do that? Because that should then sort of impact and guide the type of solution that you choose to build your bot. So for example, if we're using Salesforce for, let's say providing help articles for customers who are trying to, troubleshoot some issue with their shoes, then it's like, okay, because we're using Salesforce, I'm going to use Einstein Bot Builder because it's native to Salesforce and I don't have to integrate with something else. If you're using a totally different system, then maybe you explore a different chatbot builder tool. But particularly if you are using Salesforce in your organization, then it's a great way to then just integrate all of that information together. And then once you've understood, okay, I know that it's for a B2B use or a B2C use case, I am trying to provide customer support, and I'm trying to do so by providing information to people, and we use Salesforce to do it. Then the next piece is, how do we already provide customer support? Well, we offer them help articles. Okay, so we know that there's some information out there already. Maybe I can pull from that and leverage that to understand, okay, how are users interacting with customer support already? Do they call in mostly, or are they using help articles for certain things? Which help articles are maybe less helpful, but are not necessarily complex enough that merit our use of a human agent to provide service? And that's going to start to zero in on the type of use case that I would put into a bot. So an example might be like resetting a password. I have an account with this startup where I buy shoes and I've forgotten my password and I want to reset my password. Well, that seems like kind of a waste of time for human agents who are maybe working with more complex issues that have to do maybe with the product.
I think we lost Greg very dramatically.
Product itself. But can you
Greg,
hear
we
me?
lost you for a second. I
Okay.
think we can hear you back now.
Okay, great. Yes, so then, yes, can you leverage from those help articles essentially, how are users currently interacting with the content? If I want to do a reset password use case, then that's what I'm going to target for the bot. But you have to do all that discovery first in order to understand, okay, really that's what we're going to try and target for. It's again about going from, it's like a funnel. You're going from broad and trying to narrow it as much as possible.
Okay, that's great. I'll move to the next question because we do have a bunch.
Okay.
So I think that's really interesting. Michal was asking, what do you think about the usage of emojis? Do you think it's like something that might work for bots, or is it not serious enough? And I think it would be interesting and connect to other questions to also learn about how to bring the company's culture into the bots.
Totally. So that's getting at more what I consider to be more advanced conversation design. Like you mentioned that you've seen this content. I like to use this as sort of like an introduction to conversation design for folks. This is really about more the usability. And then when we're talking about sort of like the personalization or the personality layer or the conversational style, as it's called in linguistics, that's when we get into things like emojis and bringing the company's brand to the bot. To answer the question about emojis, I think it's absolutely great to use emojis in chat, but there should be a reason behind it. Just like with everything that we design purposefully, and we should be able to explain for every single thing that's in your conversation design, every word, every phrase, every period, every emoji, everything. You should be able to explain why it is the way it is, why it's phrased the way it is, why the pacing is the way it is, and why the emoji is there. And emojis, what they do in conversation and chat is they introduce this additional layer of what we call in linguistics contextualization cues. Essentially, it's a way of providing like that tone or that layer that we might otherwise use in our voice with intonation. There's a difference between saying, how's it going versus how's it going, winky face. You have to think through, okay, all right, what is the voice and tone of our company? What is the voice and tone of our company's brand? And given that, is it then appropriate for us and on brand to use emojis in chat? If so, then we do want to kind of bring some kind of levity or that additional layer to chat, then yes, by all means use emojis. But one caveat I would say is you should probably, even if you're using emojis in your chatbot and it's something that's on brand for your company, I would probably hesitate to use them in the apologies dialogue. When you're apologizing, if you're creating a tone of levity on top of apologizing, it can come across in English as sarcastic or not serious. And that's not something you want when you're creating an apology. So that's the only one that I'd be wary of. In terms of trying to convey your brand personality in conversation, again, see with the marketing department, I would say, see what their brand guidelines are for how they're doing communications. A great example would be ads, for example. Like if startup designers wanted to have a chatbot, then you can kind of look through the existing copy and see, okay, how is the language being used? Don't see tons of emojis, but I see some. So let's figure out like what is our threshold of emoji usage for the bot. Where there's not a whole ton of variation in terms of the textuality. You don't have like a bunch of caps all at once. You don't have like punctuation that's missing. So we need to make sure to maintain all of that in the chatbot. So doing, I think, an exercise with the brand department will help. And I do have resources for that available publicly for voice and tone, and I'm happy to share that after this as well.
Yeah, I would love that. I actually have a follow-up question on something very similar. So we have a question from our Facebook live stream, and Sarah was asking, what about GIFs? GIFs have become one of the most used tools to express ourselves in conversation. Do you feel that they can become part of an experience with a bot? Do you see a bot responding in a GIF?
I think you totally can do it. I think it, again, just depends on what is it that you're trying to do with it in the conversation. So again, GIFs, they introduce a layer of multimodality to the conversation that, again, provides sort of a layer of levity or alleviates the seriousness of the conversation. It provides a little bit more of a sort of playful voice and tone. And the question I have in return to that is, given that information linguistically, is that on brand for your company? Because if it's not, then don't do it. If it is, then okay, if I would consider very carefully because GIFs are multimodal, especially with everything that's going on in the public discourse right now, I would be very conscientious about any kind of appropriation that you might be doing in that picture. Like you yourself may not have created the GIF and someone else did, but is what is in that GIF going to come across as appropriative because what the contents of the GIF don't match your company's brand or the identity of the company? So I think, yes, you can totally use GIFs in conversation to provide that layer of sort of fun and levity, but just again, think through what are the contents in the GIF? Is it on brand? Is it something that is truly effective and communicating meaning in the conversation? Do we absolutely need it? Like that.
So another question might be a bit specific to Hebrew, so feel free to skip it. But I do think it's something interesting and something that we talk a lot about when we talk about conversations in Hebrew. So I don't know if you're aware, but when you speak Hebrew, approaching a male or a female is inherited to the sentence. It's a big part of it. And we have a big discussion in Hebrew. Should we, like today, the basic rule in Hebrew is that you approach by the male. but
Hmm.
there's a lot of conversation because obviously those are just 50% of the population.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you, or actually Michal was wondering,
Uh-huh.
if you had any experience with similar situations, maybe in other
Hmm.
languages, and if so, how did you solve them?
So I haven't had any direct experience with it, but it is something that is an ongoing conversation in the conversation design community, and that's around gender and gender identity primarily. And I think that it's complex because I think on one hand you don't want to overly prescribe gender identity to a user, but at the same time, if your language inherently encodes gender identity into the language itself, then it's also something that you can't avoid. Like if there's something like Spanish, for example, at least I know, is that they gender their words. Some words are female, some words are male. Um, it's complex. I don't have a good answer to that question. I think again, it does come back in my mind to your company's brand and brand identity. So, for example, if your customer service agents are talking on the phone, and maybe they don't necessarily know or can't necessarily perceive the gender identity of, yes, La Luna, El Sol, exactly. They can't necessarily perceive the gender identity of the other user. Or, for example, I think a better research sort of activity would be to observe chat agents who are chatting in Hebrew and they don't necessarily know the gender identity of the customer. How do they address it? What is their strategy? Can we emulate from that a little bit? So um, I don't have an answer, but I do have maybe an interesting research project you could tackle in that. And I'd love to hear about the results and what you find, because I think that if you observe chat agents who are in that situation and ask them about their strategy around it, that could give some interesting insights on how to maybe approach that.
That's great. I think we'll wrap up with one final question
Okay.
that might be also really relevant for Israelis because well, English is our second language for most of
Mm-hmm.
us, and a lot of us, as you might tell, have an accent.
Uh,
Um, so I know we talked about bots,
yeah.
but I was wondering if you have any um, experience with um, speaking conversational
Mm-hmm.
work like Alexa, like Siri, and if so, if you have any tips on how we can overcome situations of accent barriers.
Yes. So I do work on our voice products at Salesforce as well. I think that when it comes to accent, again, it comes back to the training data. So in the same way where I had like number three, the bot understands various ways of phrasing things, and that had to do with text. And again, I said there's no such thing as a misspelling. It's just all different variations of spelling. The same goes for voice. There's no one right way to pronounce things. It's just different. And the complication there is that the extent to which the other person can understand the context in which you pronounced that thing, that could impede the usability or the communication of the conversation, but that doesn't make it wrong. And that to me is something I'm very passionate about, where, you know, for a bot, you might collect a ton of text examples of how people spell things, but for voice, the way you would do it is you would need a bunch of spoken examples. And so, particularly if you're trying to train a voice agent or a voice bot on how to understand people who speak Hebrew as their first language and English as their second language, and the voice agent is trying to understand English spoken by Hebrew speakers, then those are the data that you should seek out. Go and collect a corpus of data where you can get people who are first language speakers of Hebrew saying tons of things in English. And then that's how you train the system to understand it and to eventually understand the accent.
It's really interesting. That's like a whole new topic for us.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I could do a whole separate talk on how to collect those data and then how to package it for your data scientists. But it's really important, I think, to again, like just go and there's different vendors to do it, or you can do it yourself. I mean, again, this is startup designers, so I expect that you're probably doing it on your own. And in that case, then, I'm happy to discuss ways to go about collecting those data. But that's how I would do it, is I would ask a bunch of people who speak Hebrew to speak English into a microphone and say a bunch of different kinds of things, and that's how we would use it to train the bot.
That's so interesting. Okay, so I'm sorry. I know we have a few questions that we weren't able to cover, but I think it was eye-opening and so interesting for us.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Greg. Thank you for everyone who joined online, for everyone who joined in our Facebook. I promise to share the recording. I also shared with you the 10 tips that Greg had earlier in his deck. And again, Greg, that was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I hope that people were able to get something out of this. If you've seen it before, great. I hope you got something new. If you haven't seen it before, I hope it's informative. And if you have any questions, definitely let me know. I want to say a huge thanks to George Hu for helping me. He's a colleague of mine who helped me with the demo and the visual design of these slides, as well as Aubrey Logan Terry, who is my partner in crime on research at Salesforce, for thinking through the framing of the chat and voice spectrum with me. And thank you all for being willing to have me speak.
Come anytime you want. Thank you again.
Okay,
and
sounds good.
everyone in Israel, good evening. Greg, good day.
Thank you so much.